Matthew 2, 1 through 12, a familiar passage. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, magi from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who's been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star in the east and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born, and they told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, and the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel.'" And Herod secretly called for the Magi and learned from them the exact time when the star had happened. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you've found him, bring me word, so that I may go and pay him homage too." When they heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star. Ahead of them went the star that they had seen in the east, and it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and worshipped him. Then opened the treasure chests. They offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream to not return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
It wasn't an ordinary map. No. It had ancient markings on it, very ancient markings. Hexagons, squiggles, lines that intersected with shapes of every kind. All that they had was a map of the stars, just the stars. They traveled a long distance following a magic star to find the child of the prophecy. After all, their name in Greek, magos, means Persian priest, sorcerer. It's related to magic. They are Zoroastrians and believe that good deeds done before death and seeking truths are what leads them to an eternal life that is pleasant. Their free will was their compass and the stars as their guides. They knew of the God of Israel, the God of the Jews, and they were seeking confirmation of this new king, a new Messiah. They must find the source and confirm the reality. Is there truly a new king born, King of the Jews, a ruler? The journey will take them several months, up to a year, to find the place where the Messiah was. But the journeying Magi, with their star map, follow proper protocol and first visit the king of the land where they are searching. It was the right thing to do. But during the visit, Herod, the ruling king, tries to trick them into believing that he wants to worship this child Messiah too, but instead he wants to kill the child threat. But the Magi did their good deed and informed Herod of their presence in his land and moved on. The eloquent Magi leave Jerusalem and follow the star that was ahead of them, guiding them supernaturally to where the child was. It was a map they did not understand, but they obeyed its purpose. Magicians from the east follow a star map from the east, all the way to Bethlehem to worship a child, traveling over ancient roads and deserts and places that were dangerous. And this makes me wonder, why? Why did they do this? What was their motivation? Why follow this star? How did they know they'd find this Messiah, this new King of the Jews? Why did they follow a road map they did not understand? Why? Let's see if I can find this. She's cute, isn't she? When we had our first baby, we were so naive. So naive. We took the childbirth classes, we toured the hospital, we listened to the lactation consultant. We entered the hospital with a plan, a birth plan. How many of you ever had a birth plan? So we had a roadmap for our labor, for our doctors to follow, but the doctors were in charge and there was little we could do to change that. In some situations, that would be a good thing, having the doctors in charge. In mine, it was not. My doctor declared that she wanted to get home before 11 p.m. So she intervened in my labor when she should not have, and my daughter and I suffered because of it. The baby came out with a cranial bruise that was absolutely huge. And just to clarify, my labor was only 8 hours, top to finish, only 3 in the hospital in labor and delivery. That was it. We had a plan, a map of how it should have gone. But now, because of the doctor's unnecessary interventions, we had a longer recovery in the hospital, both me and my baby. And when the time came to bring the baby home, we were already exhausted and looking for some guidance. Our first roadmap had been thrown in the trash, and now we were looking for a new one. This was the late 80s, and the internet wasn't real. So there were no online searches or chat rooms or group support. We were thrown into the deep end of the pool just like everyone else. Both of our parents were still working full time, so we didn't have any support there. We did the best we could, and like everybody else, the baby thrived until the baby hit about 9 months old. Then her development seemed to slow down. When we consulted the child development books we got from the library, they just made us more nervous because our child was not developing the same as the textbook child. And everyone knows the textbook child, right? So the pediatrician recommended we take the child to Children's Hospital in Washington, D.C., which we did. Now, my husband was working full time, so he couldn't go. I spent months there, multiple appointments, all to give us a diagnosis of stroke in utero before she was born, and that her cranial bruise at birth could have affected her development. You know, how many of you have a mama radar? How many of you have a papa radar? Okay, mine was up. There was something wrong with this picture, with this diagnosis. I couldn't put my finger on it at all, but by now she was almost 2 years old. I'm going to go back so you can see her. Isn't she cute? I went back to the library again seeking more guidance. I must have taken out 20 books. I read voraciously trying to find an answer, anything to guide me toward the truth of what was delaying her development only in certain areas. I didn't find any clear answers. I went back to my pediatrician with my mama radar up, and she listened, and we talked for a long time. We finally both concluded that this beautiful child probably had Asperger's syndrome, which was a form of autism. And Asperger's was not talked about heavily until 1997. This was 10 years before that. So there were no strategies. There was no clinical advice, nothing solid to guide me or the pediatrician. There was no roadmap of any kind. So I started reading about mothers who thought their child might have Asperger's and took some guidance from them and made the rest up. I was desperate to help my child navigate in a world where science hadn't caught up yet. I needed a North Star, a GPS, a map of the future, a way to move forward before she entered school, because that was critical. So, after a lot of prayer, I trusted my gut, listened to a few other moms who had similar but sort of not parallel stories. I developed a path forward, a plan that seemed right, a new map, a North Star-led, God-led, gut-led guidance system. It was successful. We followed a path of therapy I designed around her needs, and lo and behold, there was response. But I didn't know it all, and I couldn't help everything. School years were approaching, and I prayed and I cried and I prayed and I cried, and I kept pushing forward. The doctors couldn't help me, so I developed yet another roadmap. I listened to my mama gut, the one that God used to guide me my whole life, and just took a chance. My neurodivergent child thrived under this map, this way forward. Neurodivergence is the word that we use for people who are not neurotypical. And I love this new categorization. So they're not using autism as much anymore. They're using the word neurodivergent. I just love that. Let's see if there's a slide up here. My slides are a bit mixed up. I'm going to see if there's any in here. No, okay. So there you go. I love her. So anyway, my amazing child now today is a brilliant librarian. She's married to a wonderful man, and she embraces the world. She loves being in the library because the library, all kinds of people walk in the door. Like David, you probably know this, right? A whole bunch of different kind of people walk in the door looking for different things. And where she lives, it is incredibly diverse, internationally diverse. And so she took over much of her own understanding and training when she was in her teens, and I just became support. And she really is one of the people that I admire most in the world, because it amazes me how she sees the world around her. The way she sees people and their situations with more cognitive empathy and compassion than most people do. Cognitive compassion is different than our level of compassion. She understands the human condition in a way that surpasses things I have not witnessed before. And the map we used for her led us to a sense of her own self-discovery. It was a wonderful blessing from God. When she was young and she was struggling and she knew she was different, I would say to her, I'd sit her down, I'd say, look, I am so incredibly blessed to have you in my life because you have opened up pathways of things that I would have never noticed before. You see things I have never seen. So raising her was an incredible blessing that I didn't even know about. The Magi had a star map, and they proceeded to find the child and to shower this new Messiah king with incredible treasure. But what led them to do that in the first place? I mean, we have very little information to go on, just that the religion they practiced and the science they studied were the two factors that probably pushed them to make this incredible journey to see a new Messiah of a different land and a different religion. At some point, we accept the fact that their map was divinely created. That star was divinely inspired. They were an important part of the story, a missing link in Mary and Joseph being able to raise this child with the money they needed to escape to Egypt with, the money to fund his ministry, and spices to bury him in. It must have been so confusing for everyone involved, a divine map to the future that no one understood. Friends, we don't know God's roadmap, his guiding star for our own personal lives, nor for our small church. We just don't know it. We don't know it. And the Magi took a chance, using the judgment of their own free will to follow this star, to seek out this child, and it changed history. Lately in our church, we've suffered blow after blow after blow. Several families moving south, resources drying up, new people not coming to church, and losing a beloved matriarchal member, losing another beloved member to ALS again, another fighting to gain his life back after a brain bleed, another facing life after losing his house to fire, one right after another, no break, just bam, 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 bam. It has been so hard, including on your pastor. But we have weathered things before, like COVID, right? But this is probably the worst that we have been hit. I think it is. In the history that I've been here, 6 years, January 14, it's probably the worst we've been hit. But what do we do? What do we do? Two things. We do two things. We put one foot in front of the other. We pray. We rely and trust on God. It's not as easy as it sounds, is it? We need to stick together in all things, support one another, and then give it to God, because God will never abandon us, never forsake us. We need to stick together and be the amazing small church with a big heart that God designed us to be. You see, friends, it's in our very DNA. We love each other and we love other people. And God hears us in the wilderness. We might be walking on a road in the desert like the Magi, but we are not alone. And the second thing we need is we need a new roadmap for our church. You see, our current roadmap is kind of old. It has creases and tattered edges. We can see certain roads, but others are stained with coffee. The roads we can see have roadblocks to construction, new constructions happening. The people are not coming out of their houses to go to church. Outreach is harder. People are moving. People are weary. And the road seems filled with potholes, and the map has big creases so we can't read the pages. But why did the Magi follow the star? Because their faith told them to. So they did. They had a star to follow. They had to stay in the desert as long as it took to get to the Messiah in the desert. And so do we. We need to hold on while God is updating our GPS map with us. And we don't exactly know what God is saying, what the journey's outcome will be. But we have the start of a GPS guidance system already. Did you know that? We do. We have a vision that was designed for this church by you and guided by God. A vision, friends, is a road map. It leads us. God leads our vision. When the desert seems so long, when the church is hit by so many tsunamis all at once, we have to regroup, stay strong, stay unified, and live into our vision. That is our map to the Messiah, holding on to our faith. Let's study it together. BCC is called to glorify God through vital worship, to provide family to all. I would say we do that beautifully, wouldn't you? Okay? To meet people where they are on their faith journey. We do that in here and outside the walls, because not everyone in this room is on the same faith journey at the same time. To be an intentional presence in the community, that's new. That's a new thing God's calling us to be intentional, that we not only can take the light we have here and live among each other, we can take it and do what? Shine the light of God to the world. This is good. This is who God calls us to be. It's already part of our DNA. We just have to stick together, love each other, love the ones who are hurting, and go outside the walls with that joy and love, even when it's hard. We go outside the walls. Because what motivated the magi to find the child? Faith and sheer determination. Faith and sheer determination. What motivated me to help my child in a world where there were no maps at all? Faith, love, and determination. What will motivate us to overcome our personal tsunamis in our own lives and our church's tsunamis? Our determination that we can rise above all things with a map from God. I love that. We have our vision. We have our faith that God will be with us in the desert, our faith that God never leaves us, our faith that we will not listen to those who will try to fill us with false negative news, because that will happen. Look out for it, the false negative news, and our faith that the Herods of this world will not win. We cannot let them win. Our faith that God will lead us to the Messiah every day, all day, every Sunday, as long as we stay true and steadfast to God, no matter how long it takes. We might even have to take the long way home.
Let him know when we find the baby. He too would like to worship this new king. But then instructions came from a different order. Instructions that only come from dreams. Dreams of biblical proportions. And this is what the dream said. Don't return to the king. So simple, so straightforward. And that is the dilemma that I'm wrestling with. Do I listen to earthly authority, or maybe do I listen to the godly type? And the traveler in me, the wise man as it were, would it say, go see King Herod and give him what he wants? But my heart tells a different story. My heart says that maybe this child deserves every ounce of obedience that I could give, even if I don't quite understand the roadmap yet. following a star seemed difficult. Following this new king may be the greatest challenge yet. Yes, my friend, I think you and I, we are going to take the long way home.